Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 102. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on another movie discussion where we break down a new film that we got to check out in theaters or streaming. We'll talk about our pros, our cons, our favorite shots, and our favorite moments. And I'll also recommend whether you should check this out in theaters, wait for streaming, or maybe even skip it. And then at the end, we'll also decide, is this a timeless movie? Is this a film that I would add to my collection and rewatch on a specific rotation over and over again? Before we dive into episode number 102, though, I did want to let you know episode 101 is up on all platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Go check it out. I discussed the new Lord of the Rings film, The War of the Rohirrim. It is an animated film. I'll give you my kind of thoughts on that specific review and discussion. I kind of explain how it feels very familiar being back in that universe, but go to that video or that audio, check it out, and let me know what you thought. And if you enjoyed War of the Rohirrim and if you thought it was timeless, let me know in that specific podcast. And again, love to interact with you guys in the comments or reviews of those platforms. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this week's episode in which we are talking about Sonic the Hedgehog 3, directed by Jeff Fowler. It has a great cast of voice actors that have participated in these films. You have Keanu Reeves, you have Jim Carrey returning, you have Kristen Ritter, Ben Schwartz voicing Sonic, James Marsden as Tom, and a whole other slew of different actors. A little background on Sonic the Hedgehog and this trilogy that has basically been created over the last couple of years. I actually had not seen Sonic or Sonic 2 in theaters. I didn't really care for the character. I never really had any connection with it. But in regards to Sonic the Hedgehog 3, I saw a trailer various times in different movies that I was checking out in 2024, and I was actually surprised at how good the trailer was to lead up to Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So, because of how good the trailer was, I thought, you know what? Let me give this trilogy a shot. I watched the first and second Sonic the Hedgehog movies, and I really enjoyed them. The first one I thought was surprisingly really good. It made me laugh and chuckled a couple of times. Second one felt a little bloated. Didn't really enjoy that one as much as the first. But again, it kind of gave me the perspective of, what this kind of universe of Sonic was about. It also let me see Jim Carrey just perform a wacky kind of a character, which I really love. Again, I've really enjoyed a lot of Jim Carrey's movies in the past. So that's kind of a little bit of background before I got to check out Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Again, I've enjoyed these two movies so far, but now that I got to check it out on opening night, let's go ahead and dive into some non-spoiler thoughts about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Okay, guys, let's dive in. After leaving the theaters, I was shocked at how entertained I was watching Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I'm telling you, I didn't have high expectations. Again, I enjoyed the first one. I thought the second Sonic the Hedgehog was good. So, again, my expectations were not high. They were pretty much very low. Just wanted to have a good time. And man, I was blown away at how much fun I had watching Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Once again, the star of this show and this trilogy is not Sonic. It is Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey. He just is hilarious in every scene that he comes out in, whether he's interacting with Sonic, whether he's interacting with Agent Stone, no matter who it is, Jim Carrey is just knocking it out of the park in this role. And it's just so wacky. It's so weird, but it's my kind of humor that I like. So I really appreciated that. But there's also another character. It's not only Dr. Robotnik that steals the show, it's also the introduction of a awesome character of Shadow, who is voiced by Keanu Reeves. Shadow is a complex character. He has a cool backstory that they go through, and he just has a cool power set as well. He has a power set that matches Sonic, and he's able to take on Tails, Sonic, and Knuckles all at the same time. So the combination of Dr. Robotnik and Shadow and the way that their stories play out just made this actually an engaging type of a story as compared to the other two previous Sonic films. So overall, I thought it was a fun and entertaining time at the theaters. It made me laugh a lot of times, mostly because of Jim Carrey and his weird facial reactions and the jokes that he was calling out. Now, is it funny 100% of the time? No. There's a couple of times and a couple of jokes where it just doesn't land for me. It just didn't make me laugh. Most of it sometimes come from certain characters. We'll talk about that later in the cons part of this podcast. But again, I had a great time after I left the theaters. Let me give you a little general synopsis about Sonic the Hedgehog, just to kind of set you guys up about what this story is about. At the beginning of the film, they begin with the introduction of Shadow, and they basically set up that Shadow landed from a different planet, not really sure where, but they have him in a specific prison called Prison Island near the Bay of Tokyo. And he has basically been stuck in a cryo chamber for 50 years. And all of a sudden, somebody hacks the prison and allows Shadow to escape this chamber. And he basically immediately shows off his incredible power set of teleportation and just being able to wreck all of these different types of guys that are, in this prison trying to hold him back. And so it was a great introduction. But because of that, now he ends up going to Tokyo and starts causing a bunch of havoc. And at that point, Gun, who is this secret government agency, ends up contacting Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles in order to get them to come to Tokyo and stop this Shadow character. And then all of a sudden, you think that, okay, well, what's this going to be like? How are they going to face off against Shadow? Well, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles embarrassingly get beat by Shadow. And it just shows you right off the bat how dangerous Shadow is going to be. So because they get beat so early on, they have no other choice but to actually team up with their enemy from the prior two movies. And that's right, Sonic has to team up with Dr. Robotnik and Agent Stone. And so now you have this unlikely pairing of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles teaming up with Dr. Robotnik and Agent Stone, and they have to find out where Shadow is, who is this secret person that allowed Shadow to escape, and then find out what is the ultimate plan that they have devised. It all basically leads up into an awesome third act that you have Sonic versus Shadow. You have Dr. Robotnik trying to do all he can to try to help out in the best way that he can. And again, overall, it was an awesome time. Again, I'm not going to spoil too much about it. I want you guys to go ahead and check it out. But overall, again, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this movie. It just caught me off guard. It exceeded my expectations. And this could be almost like a comparison if I had one to Dungeons and Dragons of 2023. I had seen so many trailers for, and to me, it was either it was going to be funny or it was going to fail very miserably. And it actually was one of my biggest surprises of last year. And so that's kind of like the best comparison I can give Sonic the Hedgehog 3, a film that I thought was, okay, either going to be solid, okay, or it was just going to suck. And to my surprise, it was actually a fun time overall. So my recommendation, guys, if you guys have a chance over the holiday break in December, go check out Sonic the Hedgehog 3. If you were a fan or if you at least liked the first and second film, I think you're going to really like this third one. To me, it's probably my favorite one of the three. But again, that's just my personal opinion. If you don't really care for, if you didn't really enjoy Sonic the Hedgehog or the second film, this probably won't change your mind. But again, if you're a fan of this character, if you're a fan of Keanu Reeves or Jim Carrey, definitely would recommend you guys go check this out in theaters. All right, now those are my non-spoiler thoughts about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Let's go ahead and start spoiling some details of this film, and we'll go into the spoiler section, and we'll talk about some pros about what I enjoyed of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. First pro, easy, clear cut. My favorite character in this film is Shadow. I mean, the way that they set his story up and his entire story arc really is, again, a character that is on a path of revenge, but it's understandable. You see glimpses of his background. And can I say that I really enjoyed how they broke out the different types of flashbacks for Shadow. They didn't want to just dump it all on you. That's kind of what I felt like they did in Sonic 2. They kind of just did a lot of exposition dump and they did a lot of flashbacks and they kind of just dumped it all on the audience. Here, they broke it up very nicely just to kind of make you like Shadow more and more and almost feel like you want to root for him because you know the pain that he is going through. Spoiler warning for anybody that has not seen Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Feel free, jump out of this video, watch the movie, then come back and see if you agree with my pros and cons. But the pain that Shadow is feeling is because of the fact that he only had one friend, a human named Maria. She was always visiting him when he landed on Earth. They created a bond. Really, they were their only friends. And all of a sudden, an accident happened. And Shadow cannot forgive himself, and all he can think about is it's Gun's fault. It's the secret agency's fault for why I lost my best friend. And so, what is he going to do? He's going to do whatever it takes in order to find justice. So again, setting up a character that seems like it's going to be the antagonist, but then you realize that their complex background and their history actually, again, they're not a villain. They're just trying to do what's right. They think that they're on the right side in this story. Again, Shadow, from his perspective, feels like he has no other choice but to destroy Gun, but to destroy the world in some way in order to feel like he's able to get rid of the pain of losing his friend Maria. That alone is what makes this story a lot better than Sonic 2 and the first Sonic as well. So, just a complex setup of Shadow, and also he's badass. His whole design, the color that they were able to animate for his character, Keanu Reeves voicing him. I mean, what better voice can you get than a cool actor like Keanu Reeves? So the character itself delivers on every front, and it's just so cool to kind of see him interact with other characters in this Sonic universe. One other thing I got to call out, the music that they use for Shadow. He has his own kind of theme, and it's very like a tragic type of a theme. It's very kind of like orchestral, and you can kind of hear like a choir at times. And it's always, again, him interacting with other characters, and you can kind of feel his pain. I think that's what the goal of the music was meant to be, is to make you feel the pain that Shadow is going through in this film. So really awesome stuff. His character was by far the most interesting part of this movie. So had to call that out as my first pro. Second pro for me is the animation of the action sequences or the visual effects that they were able to do. Again, so far from all these three Sonic movies, the animation has been really cool. Like it's never been anything that's kind of jarring in a way where like, oh, okay, I can see how this doesn't look right with a human here and an animated character here. But it's always worked for me. But in this specific film, they really nailed the action sequences. Whenever it was Sonic versus Shadow, it just they nailed every single part. There's like a part in the first act where Shadow's on a motorcycle. Again, another badass moment for for Shadow, but he's on a motorcycle in Tokyo riding around, and then you have Sonic just trying to chase him down, and they're going through all this different type of traffic, and the way that they're able to kind of slow down these shots and kind of focus on both Shadow and Sonic, it just works so good. The visualizations of it are crisp. Everything just works so well for me. But what's even better is in the third act when you have that epic showdown between Sonic and Shadow. There's a lot of inspiration in their battles of Dragon Ball Z. You see a lot of these different types of like action sequences where they're zooming and they're going super fast around the earth, battling in different locations, crashing into mountains, and it just reminded me so much of Dragon Ball Z fights of like Goku and Vegeta. And then there's also certain elements where I see like inspiration of like Man of Steel. If you guys remember in Man of Steel, when Superman is fighting Zod, he's like punching Zod, and it looks like he goes far away, and then you see Superman fly and catch up to him. You see an exact scene kind of set up in that way when Sonic is punching Shadow. And so, really cool stuff that they were able to pull off. Again, not a visual expert in any way. You could probably tell me after you watch this movie, and you're like, Victor, those visual effects were actually terrible. Again, from my perspective, just watching it once, I really enjoyed how they actually developed those action scenes. It just making them look so clean and so precise. Really enjoyed that piece. So that's my second pro. Third pro for me is really the entire third act. I thought it was just executed very well. It was incredible. They set up good stakes for the third act. They had some awesome and funny twists and turns throughout that third act. And they also, what I think was a surprise to me is they had a really great mirroring of characters. What I mean by that is they had, and again, spoilers at this point, but Jim Carrey actually plays two characters. Not only does he play Dr. Robotnik, but he also plays Dr. Robotnik's grandfather. And so he plays two characters, and he basically is playing Robotnik, but as an older grandpa version, and then the Robotnik that we have already seen in the previous two Sonic movies. And you actually see the mirroring of the characters in this film. First with Dr. Robotnik, when he looks up to his grandpa, he thinks, "Man, I want to be this guy. This guy is like has all of his stuff together. He has a crazy villainous plan." But then he ends up finding out that what his plan was for Grandpa Robotnik is to actually destroy the Earth. He feels that humans have failed him and Shadow, and he feels like, you know what? They got rid of my granddaughter. They didn't want us. They kept Shadow in a cryo chamber for 50 years. Humans are a failed experiment. So you know what? I'm gonna get rid of the Earth. And he basically is gonna destroy the planet Earth with a ultimate weapon that he was able to create. And so when Dr. Robotnik sees his grandpa and he finds out his ultimate plan, then he realizes, oh man, I, Dr. Robotnik, who does not have a family, that's what I'm going to turn into. I'm going to turn into my grandpa, who basically, because he has no family, because he has nobody to rely on, he ends up realizing that, am I going to become somebody that's going to destroy the earth? And Dr. Robotnik just went against that. And then you have it with Sonic and Shadow. You have Shadow, who is at a point in his life where all he wants to do is get revenge and get justice for losing Maria. And so, what is it going to cost him? Basically destroying the earth, and Shadow's okay with that. And at one point, Sonic gets to that point as well. Sonic, in the third act, he thinks he's losing Tom. Tom ends up getting punched and hit by Shadow with crazy power. And he goes to the hospital, and Sonic doesn't know if Tom is going to survive. At that point, Sonic ends up becoming a character where he's now conflicted. All he wants to do is get revenge for Tom. He wants to take out Shadow at all costs. And again, another mirroring. You see Sonic, and Sonic now is at a point where he can kill and take out Shadow. And then he realizes, no, if I do that, I become what Shadow is. I become a character that is not what I'm meant to be. It's not what my heart is telling me to do. And so again, I really enjoyed that in a kind of animated film like this that's, it's geared for kids, but also for a wide audience. But I really enjoy that they were able to set up in this third act a mirroring of these various characters. First, Dr. Robotnik comparing himself to his grandpa, and then Sonic comparing himself to Shadow. So really awesome stuff that they were able to pull off in that third act. They executed it and they landed it. Job well done to the director and the team that developed the third act of this film. All right, those are my pros. Let's dive into just one con that I have. Again, slight nitpick for me, but like I mentioned before, some of the jokes just didn't land in regards to as the film was playing out. But what's unfortunate about this is that, and what I've noticed in the other films and entries of Sonic the Hedgehog, it's usually the jokes that don't land are actually coming from Sonic. I'm always kind of confused when really the main character, Sonic, he should really be the main spotlight. He should really kind of have these types of moments where, he's really the funniest character. But what I've noticed, at least for me and my personal preference, I actually don't even think Sonic is the funniest character. Like I mentioned a little bit before, to me, the star of all these movies has been Jim Carrey. He has been the character that I've always enjoyed seeing on screen. Sonic, he's had a couple of jokes, but they've never made me laugh. They've never made me chuckle. It's always just kind of been like, oh, okay, yeah, like it's just a typical joke. And that's again just my personal kind of preference in regards to humor. But it's just so weird that in every single film, I've actually thought that Sonic was the weak point when it came to the comedy piece of it, which is so strange. And I told that to my brother of like, it's so weird that Sonic, who is really he's the title character of these three movies, but to me, he's never been the best character. He's never been the most interesting character. It's always been other people that have taken the spotlight, at least for me. So let me know what you think about that, guys. Do you agree with me or do you disagree with me that Sonic is actually really not even the most prominent character in his own movies? It's always other characters like Shadow, like Knuckles, like Dr. Robotnik. They're always the ones that actually really steal the show in his own movies. But again, that could just be a personal thing that I caught on to. But that's really the only con I have. Just jokes not landing, mostly coming from Sonic. There was also a couple of meta jokes that I felt like weren't really needed. Again, I'm not really into seeing characters become meta in a way where they're almost talking to the audience. So didn't really like those. But other than that, that's all I really have to say about the negative stuff for Sonic the Hedgehog. Let's go ahead and bring this back to the positive side and talk about some favorite performances, favorite scenes, and favorite shots. If I had to say a favorite performance, for me, it was between Jim Carrey and Keanu Reeves for their characters of Dr. Robotnik and Shadow, respectively. But if I had to choose one, I got to stick with my man, Jim Carrey. he just, again, he plays two characters in this movie, and both are hilarious. Both have funny moments. There's just so much going on in the film, and Jim Carrey always has some great lines. He delivers them so wacky and so weird that it just works for me. That's the kind of humor that I like. So there's again a lot of good stuff, but also what makes Jim Carrey's performance so cool in this movie is he actually has a turn. He actually at one point becomes the hero. Him and Shadow, the entire film, and you're seeing them being the antagonist. And at one point, you have Jim Carrey playing Dr. Robotnik. He has no other choice but I'm not only going to help Sonic, but I'm going to save the world. And I'm going to try to do whatever I can to steer this weapon out of the way so that it doesn't destroy Earth. So you even have a face turn for Dr. Robotnik, and actually becomes a hero. So wild stuff, but that whole performance by Jim Carrey is just so cool. I would again, that's one of my bigger recommendations as to why I would want people to watch is just to watch how wacky and funny Jim Carrey is. So Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik is my favorite performance. Favorite scene is actually in the third act when Sonic and Shadow are facing off, and then they actually have a discussion after their battle where, again, Sonic has that moment of clarity where he's basically going to turn to the dark side if he ends up knocking out and destroying Shadow. And instead, he realizes, no, I can't go to that kind of a path. I have to listen to what Tom said and to listen to my heart. And my heart is saying, not to take you out, Shadow, not to do this. And then they end up having a discussion. And you see Shadow kind of saying, like, why didn't you take me out? Why did you do this? Why aren't you just getting revenge? And he ends up realizing that, hey, just because we have this pain of losing people, we can't let that just kind of take us over, right? We can't let our emotions just tell us to do this for revenge or for justice. And Shadow ends up realizing that, yes, I might not get over the pain of losing Maria, but with family and with friends and with other people, you're never going to get rid of the pain of losing somebody, but you'll be able to make new memories and at least soften it a little bit more. So really cool discussion that Sonic and Shadow had. Again, really surprised that it wasn't an actual action scene that I really enjoyed. That was my favorite. It was actually just them talking on the moon, just talking about how to kind of get over pain. Really love that discussion between Sonic and Shadow as my favorite scene. And then as a favorite shot, now I could really just honestly say any shot that includes Shadow is my favorite shot. But if I had to choose one, it was actually this one shot from the trailer where you have Sonic and Shadow facing off. This is their first interaction. And was one point where Shadow is on his motorcycle on top of a building, and then he just kind of launches himself down. And then you have Sonic who just sees him and is like, okay, I'm just going to go right up and meet him face to face. And they're both going to crash right into each other. It was a shot from the trailer, but I freaking liked how that looked and how they visualized it and animated it. So that is my favorite shot, and I would like to see that as a poster if they ever made that, of just Sonic and Shadow facing off, just going head to head, one coming from the top, other one coming from the bottom, and just causing a crazy explosion. All right, guys, those are my pros and cons of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Again, really surprised that I enjoyed it this much. But the question is this film timeless? Is this a movie that I would want to rewatch in the future? This is tough, guys. I mean, ever since I left the theaters, I've been really kind of in my brain, kind of thinking back and forth. Is this a movie that I am going to consider timeless? And it's tough. One of the things that I kept thinking about is like, well, why would I want to rewatch this? Well, I definitely want to watch Dr. Robotnik and his performance, Jim Carrey just killing it as two characters. I would want to see Shadow once again, his whole design as a character, his story, his background, the action sequences. So there's a lot of things that I feel like I would want to, in this kind of regard, considered a timeless movie. But as of today, I think I'm going to say that this film, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, is not a timeless movie. Some of the reasons as to maybe why I'm considering that, and again, I'm definitely going to flip flop. I feel like if I watch it again in the future, I'm pretty sure I'll flip flop and say, no, you know what, I was wrong. I think this is timeless. But um, as of today, I think why I would consider it not a timeless movie would probably just be because of the fact that there's a lot of jokes that just didn't land for me that come from Sonic. Again, not picking on Sonic, but just a lot of those jokes just didn't work. But I'm also thinking that because this movie is so reliant on a lot of the comedy elements of it, I'm also wondering if the next time I watch it, if the jokes just for any character if they just don't land as hard or if they just don't hit as hard. So that's one of the reasons why maybe it might not be a timeless movie. I also feel like, again, like how often will I get excited for the action sequences? Watching it for the first time, it really did impress me, but will it keep me coming back if I eventually just kind of get tired of like watching Sonic and Shadow face off over and over again? And also, again, I don't really see myself watching this like every single year. This could be like maybe once every 3 or 5 years. It could be a good movie to kind of watch here and there. But again, I'm definitely gonna flip flop on this. These are just tough movies. They have potential to be timeless, but again, as of today, it is not timeless for me. But what about you guys? What did you think about Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Have you gotten a chance to check it out in theaters? If you have, let me know down below in the comments or in the reviews of Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Let me know who your favorite character was, what was your favorite moment of the movie, and if you consider Sonic the Hedgehog 3 a timeless movie. All right, guys, thank you so much for all those that stayed all the way through to listen to my thoughts about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 102 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we cover a new movie that we got to check out in theaters. We break it down, we call out our pros and cons, and then we'll decide whether it is timeless. All right, guys, thanks so much. Have a great holiday break, and I'll talk to you guys later.